The frame of proofing for the spine is again one of those contexts in which it can be difficult to explore unless you already have some kind of pre-established understanding of patterns in which to move the spine and through which to proof. For example, initially we work on very fundamental patterns isolated to the rib cage region, the cervical and the thoracic spine, and also the lumbar spine, working with movements of the pelvis in a variety of planes, in the transverse sagittal and the frontal planes. And essentially this then gives you a vocabulary or a context within which to explore once that understanding has developed. This is not to say that the principle or the perspective of proofing of the spine is something that you cannot use if you do not have an understanding on all of these patterns. It most certainly is something that you can continue to use to explore certain patterns and movements of the spine before you've even, or I have defined them for you with a particular name or in a particular linear context. It does just mean, however, that your imagination might just be quite limited. We quite essentially will go through different types of patterns, whether that's a down-up wave, up-down wave, a lateral wave, whether it's located more to the lumbar or the thoracic and things like this. But essentially, if you are able to just follow with your eyes and follow the ideas, you can still take away a lot of useful information and apply this effectively in the context of proofing of the spine. First of all, proofing of the spine can be done on the hands and knees in the initial instance. I'll just run through this quickly. This would be basic things, just like, for example, a type of happy cat and then a type of angry cat here, in which you can just explore these. But of course, adding some elements, the scapula comes in as a point of effect, not as a point of initiation for this type of movement. You can work with circles of the thoracic spine here, or the rib cage to be more general, or initiating from the pelvis, working with the pelvis. You can as well work with types of waves from this position, circles, but most specifically we're referring to movement of the spine and proofing of the spine in the standing position. Most notably with this proofing of the spine, we will be moving through space as well. Not necessarily, hugely locomoting, but effectively letting the body move as an effect of movement of the spine, and letting the body move, whether that's the arms or the legs, in order to affect the spine. For example, I start with movement of the spine. I choose, just out of a point because I did deadlifts yesterday and then my lower back is quite tight, I'm going to work with proofing of the lumbar spine. If we were going to give this a definition, I'm doing a backward pelvic roll. Yeah, but essentially it's the lower part, the lumbar section of a down-up spinal wave. And now as I wave, I can feel it pulls the feet off the floor in a stepping-like fashion. And I work with it. If I choose to step, it affects it in a different way. Now, one of the main things, if you have been studying the linear spinal patterns, is to start to move out of the linear frame of, for example, it working in the sagittal or working in the frontal plane, and start to explore some of the diagonal type movements. The basic principles should remain the same, which basically means, this is not affecting my spine. I'm just hip thrusting. I need to keep it isolated in space as it is with the normal pattern, but it travels. So here, I might then come the other way. Now I'm doing the forward pelvic roll, but exploring all angles. And at some point, it might just change into the other one. It doesn't matter. I keep it rolling, and from here, I can work into hip hiking and dropping, working with the frontal pelvic roll. But again, I feel it both affecting the knees and being affected by the knees. I'm going left, right, still focusing on the lumbar. And at some point, I might choose to home into the rib cage. So now I'm just working with a type of rolling, forward rolling in the sagittal plane. But then of course, I said, I might reach out further with it. And this is now, if you've been working with the visualization of drawing the circle in space, now it reaches out. It reaches out. Again, it's not just a leading, it's like moving the whole body with it. It's isolated to this point, but then whoa, it becomes bigger, it reaches out. And it still has that circle quality. Coming back again. Again, I can work into a frontal rolling, again drawing through the space. I can even make it quite profound, but it is still affecting the thoracic spine. Of course, incorporating the scapula with this feels quite natural. That's completely fine. But again, keep it conscious. So I'm working without the scapula now. I'm choosing to work without the scapula, exploring the thoracic and the rib cage. Now I'm working with the scapula, along with it. So it's very, very defined. Likewise, if I then now decide to incorporate naturally the pelvis and the lumbar, it's a deliberate choice, and now I stop and I just keep the thoracic. I incorporate it again with the pelvis, and maybe now just the pelvis. I work into a full wave. I remind myself of the wave in the sagittal plane, just the natural down-up wave, and then I start to move with it. When I pull up, it causes me to step. I lift, it causes me to step. Likewise, if I choose to step, I can see how it affects me. I can push into the ground to provide a stimulus which causes a wave. And this is a nice visualization of just being affected through the floor. Like a stimulus just pumps, boom, pumps up and then comes out of the body. So this is a nice way of affecting the down up wave. I step, whoa, and it comes up through the body. Pressing with different parts of the foot, the outside, the inside, just to proof and check this. It now leads into more of a lateral wave. And again, if I let myself go with this lateral wave, it affects a natural type of waddling step. Yeah? So here. And again, if I want to change to the down up wave, I think again of that stimulus coming whoa, through the floor. Whoa, 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 whoa. Pushing up through and coming out. And again, it leads me to step in places, but I can choose to step somewhere. Boom, boom. Just pressing sensation for the down up, and then I go back into lead with the up down wave. I can work more with the cervical spine, exploring the cervical spine in space. Some favorites of mine, keeping from here, more to the thoracic upwards, and just working with the circle. In some cases, if you have tightness in the thoracic and here, you get some clicking and movements in there. Another one is then to work with the spiral, with the top of the head, spiral, and again, letting the movement back the other way, the movement of the feet go with it. And you can also really start to emphasize the waves, really working through space, transferring the weight, proofing all parts, working. Although I'm leading with the head, it affects a huge hip circle in space. So it's effectively like a down-up wave, but it's huge. Sorry, an up-down wave, but it's huge. Now, working then more specifically into the lumbar spine, you can start to use a load, and the load is going to be the arms. So for example, if I work here, and I place myself more stationary, I work with the pumping upward, and then I might work specifically with the load of the arms twisting into the lumbar spine, and I already got a nice crack there. Okay, coming through, working back the other way, and if it feels stable, you can work the whole circle. You can map the back reality here. And of course, you can even work more micro. If you choose to work micro, again, just navigating these different regions of the spine. And essentially the idea here is to try and map it all. Map it all. I don't mean just mapping patterns. I'm not talking about just mapping, the down-up wave and the lateral waves and the circles and things like this. But try to feel every part of your spine. Try to feel the cervical, the upper part of the cervical. Can you feel L5? Like trying to work into those places. In the primary instance, going for the places that need the checking. So as I mentioned yesterday, I was performing some heavy deadlifts. So I know today that it's very worth looking into my lumbar spine to check anything didn't get over compressed, or if there is some compression there to help release it. Make sure there's no unnecessary tension hanging around. If you've been doing handstand work the previous day, or even if it's before your handstand work, just checking through the thoracic spine. Does it have some movability in there? All of these things, making sure that every aspect of your spine feels that it has had some neural drive pumped into it. And essentially, in general, this is the perspective of proofing. We are checking that these ranges, these places that you're going to move into, first of all, if they're feeling okay, that there's nothing hiding in there, but secondarily also, or perhaps primarily or equally primary, feeding the neural drive in there so that it's firmly placed on your cortical map.